Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the CSU Global webinar. As we wait for everyone to join us, I'll be administering a quiz. So please join in and taking a little poll with us as we get ready for this webinar. All right, get your answers in on our first poll question. I'm going to be ending it in about 10 seconds. All right, here we go. We're ending that one. And the results, looks like 46% of you are professionally happy. So we'll go to our next quiz question. One moment. And your next question. And I'll be ending this one in about 5 seconds. It looks as though 60% of you say yes, that thought of a recession does scare you. And our last quiz question to start the webinar is coming up. And I'll be ending this one in about 10 seconds, so get your answers in. Okay, ending this one right now. And it looks like we are divided on this one. So we're going to have a very lively conversation. All right. So once again, welcome everybody. I'm Jana Hayhurst, the Director of Marketing here at CSU Global, and I'll be introducing your speakers today. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer them and keep this a really lively and interactive conversation. So first, the person leading this conversation today is Dr. Dawn Roller of Enterprise Engagement at CSU Global, and joining her is Dr. Deb Sepich, the MBA and Masters of Marketing Program Director. So I will hand it over to you, Dawn. Welcome both Deb and Dawn.
Sounds good, Jana, and thank you so much. I love those questions. So we're mainly happy and we're a little nervous. I didn't believe in education until I was 37 years old. I started later in life, so I totally get that last question as well. But I'm going to start by pausing, really giving and posing a question to the audience. Do you have a grip on your business, or does your business have a grip on you? Most leaders in business have a lot of frustrations right now. When we went to Zoom, a lot of people became lax, weren't as intent on their position or their career as they could be. And then also personnel worries, conflict, inadequate profits, or lack of growth with the difference in the business the last 3 years. So how do you really become a person who is indispensable? And how do we take that one question about fearing the recession and kind of flip it to the other side? So today I'm going to talk with Dr. Deb Sepich, and we're going to talk about being recession-proof. And personally and professionally, we're going to put both spins on it so that you can really, as you're looking at current surroundings around you, because right now you can say the world is a little fearful when it comes to business, but the other side of that is there's tons of opportunities. So the first question for you, Deb, is, does the responsibility lie with the industry, the organization, or the person to truly be recession proof? And is there a safe industry to be in?
I love that that question, because we, it used to be, especially if you are a finance person. Now, look at how the sun's coming through this morning. I'm in Oregon and the sun is starting to come up here. And so I've got an interesting way the sun is going to hit my face right now for a little bit. But this is just what happens when you're doing interview, when you're doing this kind of stuff. There used to be defensive industries, and we used to, think about that, especially before the pandemic. Healthcare was always considered, kind of a defensive industry. Education, utilities, those were always defensive industries. When you were accountant, I remember my dad used to always say, go into accounting. You're always gonna have a job if you're an accountant. Childcare, was always kind of considered a defensive industry. But the pandemic really caused this disruption. And now we don't really see these things as, and even now we can't even look at recessions as being the thing that's going to cause the disruption anymore. Innovations are causing these huge disruptions. So we can say, yeah, recessions are going to cause, but there's going to be innovations that are causing disruptions now. So can we feel safe in an industry? I don't think there's any safe industry anymore. We're going to be looking at these things that are happening. So recession, I feel like there's kind of you can feel like a recession is going to hit, and that's going to cause some issues, like in usually hospitality and service industries. Manufacturing generally sees a hit during a recession, but the true place that you have the ability to actually have an impact on the equation during a recession or during any kind of disruption is you. Like you are the one. And so the factor that you can control is you. And so when you take inventory, it's like you're taking inventory of yourself during that time. So where are you today? How can you weather a disruption? How can you weather a recessionary time? How will you be prepared during the recession? And then I think there's even this important thing that businesses look at is how will you weather when you come out of the recession? Like when there's where will you be positioned when you come out of the recession? So, those are some things. I'm going to fix this thing. So those are some things that you can look at. So.
Yeah. And I think I love how Deb just said that, we're in charge of us. And a lot of people wait until they change careers or they want a new job to update that resume or update those skills. And it's really important that we are really the CEO of ourselves, and that we take those inventories and we add those things that we need. I saw a question that just popped up, and they said, well, we talk about, people that have been laid off. I think this whole discussion is about people that have been laid off. I was in a downsize in 2016, and they said, you can have this job or you can take the severance package. I wouldn't have hired myself for the job. I didn't have those skills or abilities. So I had to pivot and take, go ahead and take the severance. It was just better for me, better for the company. But you really have to ask yourself, am I authentically aligned with my professional choices? And really answer honestly. Deb brought this up yesterday as we were talking. So, as we looked at the mission, the vision, and the principles where we work and what we attach ourselves to. So let's talk about that, Deb, and just the personal beliefs and value alignment, because really looking at these recession-proof tactics, those tactics that you just brought up yesterday were phenomenal. Can you share a few of those?
Yeah. And Dawn, it really kind of falls into that, they offer you a job, they offer you this job, and you're like, okay, this is a time that I can assess. If I'm going to take this job, there's two things. First of all, do I align personally with the mission, vision, and values of the company and where they're going? And if I take this job, am I authentically going to be who I was, who I'm meant to be in that position? And if I'm not, how do I invest in who I am authentically meant to be? And where am I going to invest my time in becoming that? So this is really a time for you to align yourself. If you've been laid off, to align myself as where am I to go? This is kind of your time. We're all resilient in different ways, and this is a time to invest in that. Like what is my mission? Where do I find my values? You all have skills, but it's also where do I really see myself being? And because you need to, you're going to be investing in things that need to be ready for where you are right now, but where do you need to be ready when we come out of this? So it's really aligning yourselves, your personal mission, vision, and values, and then the mission, vision, and values of a company that you want to work with. I kind of find, I was laid off too. I've been laid off twice. So and when you have long careers, you've been laid off a couple times. And one of the things that I did is I looked at the companies that I work. So when you're working within a company, you're working with service industry, with different companies within that. And so I looked at that and said, of those companies that I worked with when I was inside, so I worked at a company called Tektronix, what companies would I have liked to have worked with that were actually servicing my organization?
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and try to see if there's something there, someplace there that I'd like to work with. And I took the time to kind of analyze different industries. Where would I want to be? Who had the kind of mission, vision, values that I would want to work with?
Yeah, and who would you hire as that employer? Because you're, as a person, you're hiring that establishment as much as they are hiring you. And I love you saying that, because in 2017, I did go to work for one of our customers. I made the switch from where I was to one of our customers. Can you talk to me? You mentioned yesterday about 10-minute meetings and never eat lunch alone. Can we talk about that concept real quick? Because if you are out of work or you're looking, maybe something's coming in 6 months to a year, how do you prepare for that? And how will those two things that you mentioned with the 10-minute meetings and never eat lunch alone, how, well, in person or virtual, how would that work into the equation?
Well, I actually learned the never eat lunch alone from a mentor of mine. The 10-minute meetings I learned from a mentor of mine. She said, every day, make a point to have at least one 10-minute meeting where you're calling somebody and she said, don't do a check-in, do a checkup. And I went, a checkup? Like what? Because she goes, checking in is you're checking in to see how they're doing, right? Which is important. You should check in with people and see how they're doing. But she said, you're really checking in, you're checking up, like you're checking up to see what you should be doing. So you're calling them and you're saying, hey, what kind of books are you reading? What's your company doing about this? You're checking up to see what you should be investing in. So the check-in is about them. The checkup up is about you. And like, what books are you reading? What should I be doing? It's more kind of an informal way of having somebody tell you some of the things that you should be doing. And especially these are people you really, really care about. And I had never thought about the checkup before, but you go to a physician to figure out what you should be doing to make yourself better. And I thought, I like that idea. So she said, do at least one of those. And during the pandemic, she was actually really encouraging me to do, during the bad parts of it, to continue to do those checkups. And so that's what I would do. The 10-minute meeting, or excuse me, the never eat lunch alone comes from Nike. So if you walk around the Nike campus, I was blessed to grow up in the Beaverton, Oregon area, and Nike was one of our clients at the company that I had. And we would walk around the Nike campus, and I always was just like walked in. You never saw people alone. You never saw people sitting alone. You never saw them eating lunch in the cafeterias alone. And I kind of just one day, noticed that. And one of my friends, who I'm hoping to have in a webinar with us down the road, he doesn't work at Nike anymore. He has his own company. But I asked him, I said, Matt, what is this? What, nobody is sitting alone. And he goes, oh, we have places for that, to people to get away kind of and, relax, but you never eat lunch alone, because that's the time for you to actually get together and just, get to know one another, but also kind of, they were doing those checkups. Like you're told to eat lunch with people from different departments and get to know one another. So their concept is never eat lunch alone.
That's amazing, because you can learn. I've always a previous university that I worked at, I said, you will always find brilliance in every person.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take 10 minutes just to find that brilliance and to add it to your repertoire. They can always teach you something. So when we said about continued learning, kind of that 50,000 foot view, you and I had talked about a couple things that we just thought everybody did. Like when I did take the severance package, I asked 8 people for recommendations. So I always LinkedIn, if you look at it, I've got current recommendations. So whether you're happy in a company for 15 years, having current recommendations, current write-up, current education. So with that 50,000 foot view, kind of give us some tips and tricks on that solutioning and investing time and energy and monetarily into your future. Can you kind of touch on that, Deb?
Yeah. So the continued learning is, first of all, I like people to know, where are you leading and where are you following? Figure out, and the reason that you do that is because if you can know where you're leading and where you're following, you can kind of tell where you need to get continued education. So I first like to ask people that question, like where is that? So where do you need to kind of fill in the gaps? And then the other thing is, where are you bringing solutions and where are you just bringing problems? Because where you really are able to bring yourself kind of recession-proof and really bring your importance to an organization. As a leader, when I was a leader, people were just bringing me problems and not bringing me solutions. And I know all of you have heard this before. And it's not, then I was thinking, okay, they need more help. They need more help in order to understand how to bring a solution along with the problem that they bring. And to me, that was just education. Like they just need to learn a little bit more critical thinking, just a little bit more problem solving. So if you find yourself in kind of that loop, as I'm always bringing problems because I'm really good at critical thinking and seeing what's going on. I'm really good at seeing that. So that's a skill, right? That's a skill, but I'm not really good at actually figuring out how to solve it yet. Then you're like, okay, I've got this skill, but I don't have this skill. So really look inwards and try to figure that out. Now I need to get problem solving down. Good at critical thinking, I need to get problem solving down. So line those things up so that okay, this is a gap I need to fill, right? Because that's where you're really making yourself, the organization needs you and your leader needs you because they can't solve every problem. So they want you to bring. So I just tell tell people, look at that and know where you need to fill in the gaps. Because now you know where to invest your time. Because during a recession, really good businesses, like this is a great question that I have brought up. During a recession, is this a good time to invest in education? Really good businesses during a recession invest. They invest so they're ready when the recession is over, when you're coming out of recession, to be prepared to be ahead.
Right.
So if you're in a position to analyze where I need to fill the gaps and to fill in and to have that ready, you're in a position, first of all, to take jobs that other people aren't prepared for, right? Because they can't do it. But second, to be prepared to be ahead of everyone else. So good businesses invest. You treat yourself like a good business and you invest in those things and be ready. So that's what I like to tell people. Education is never a bad investment. Never a bad investment. And there you go. As long as you're prepared to know where your weaknesses are and where to really, really invest and be prepared to fill the gaps. So
and I think that's where you look at the full gamut. Like you said, you went through process solving. I don't know anyone that hasn't been laid off or is changing careers that doesn't say, wait a minute, was it me?
Yeah.
And then figuring out, taking the accountability, the ownership, the optimism to say, okay, I can change or I can pivot a few of these skills to move the other way. So let's really look at personal experiences that have supported the success and what you're looking at. And before we do that, I think we're going to go to a polling question. So Jen, you want to bring us up a polling question and then we'll move on? Yeah, and this is a neat one because the question is, have you ever thought about it? And then we'll go ahead and go into the experiences.
Poll is going to end in 10 seconds.
Woohoo! I love that. So you've
Good.
thought about it. And let's go one more question, Jana, because I want to ask this one before we move on to the last two topics.
Mm.
Because this is very important. And be honest, be honest, be honest.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll now.
Wonderful. And I know everybody's saying, did we pass? Did we pass?
Oh, I love that you have 55% yes, that people feel professionally valued, but I want to see that 43% go up.
And I actually really love the never thought about it too, because
Yeah.
right now we're going to switch gears a little bit and we are going to move over to really looking at personal experience and pivoting personally and professionally. As Deb and I talked yesterday, to stay abreast with current state of affairs, you have to pivot often personally and professionally. And really the world's changing. It changes every day. There's some industries like technology and education that are outdated within weeks now because it's going so fast. So Deb, where should we look for resources to really grow internally to an organization and externally in an industry or world? I saw a stat yesterday that people used to stay 10 to 15 years with companies, but now we're staying 1 to 2 years, growing and then moving and things like that. So can you kind of touch on that for us when it comes to that personal professional
Yeah,
balance?
I think a lot about the most interesting person in the room, like, the most interesting, his most interesting gentleman, most interesting man, is I think more than ever now, we really need to be interesting people. And that means being interested in a lot of things, because I started out in, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so I, kind of saw that and saw how he didn't really know how to run a business, but he was in this, I grew up in the music industry. So, and it was really fun. I mean, the Grateful Dead, all these interesting people that, were coming through the doors. So I saw that, but it was more the technical end, right? Amplifiers, channel mixers, and all that. So it's technical end. So I grew up in that industry, and then went to work for Tektronix, which was so I was in the the electronic industry, integrated circuit manufacturing. So I grew up in that industry, and then went into health and safety software, so chemical manufacturing. I mean, it changed, like that. And I was a computer programmer. So taught myself to program. So it's like all these things, if you saw the career trajectory, but the one thing that was the same about all that is you could look at all the different careers, but the one thing that were business skills.
Right.
I kept up on the business skills, accounting skills, finance skills, those stayed true regardless of the industry that you were in. So, but you had to know enough about the industry to be able to have authenticity when speaking about the industry. And I think that that's more and more true today. So where do you stay on top of innovations and things that are going on? It's just, you need to be listening to Forbes. I read financial magazines. I stay up on watching CNBC. I mean, you just kind of stay up and listen to things that are happening, and listen to those industries that kind of pique your interest, and then just go deeper. Don't rabbit hole, but go, a little bit deeper.
When you're listening, what do you listen for? Like if you were going to give like the top 3 places for people to go just to have a current abreast of the world, what would those be, and what are you looking for or listening for?
Forbes. I mean, like I listen to Forbes, and I kind of go just to kind of stay interested about, I think I go 30% down, right? 30%, and kind of stay in that top 30%. Economic information. So stay up on the economic information of what's occurring in the world. That helps you with knowing on the recession stuff. So like Deloitte, actually, going to the Deloitte website, looking at things that they're interested in. Another one that I really love is Trend Hunter. Like the Trend Hunter website, because you're looking at innovations, things that are coming down the road. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they were really involved in looking at AI and understanding where that was going to have impact on the world. So Chat GPT was really, they were way ahead of what was going to happen with that. So those are the things that I look at. So I look at trends, I look at economic information, and then reading Forbes. So where are businesses going? What are the larger Fortune 100 businesses doing? And that I just kind of keep a pulse. And I read like, snippets. I don't, read long books about anything. Just keep yourself abreast and pick maybe 10, that you just really kind of want to know about. And don't read deep. You're just reading a narrow about that to stay in touch. But in terms of the pivot, I am working with so many students now that are looking at pivoting to different areas. And if you are a business person, if you stay up on your business skills, the pivot is easy to do, just not easy to do. I mean, it's a tough thing to pivot, but your business skills are what's essential. Can do you know enough about accounting? Do you know enough about finance? Do you know enough about project management? Do you know enough about supply chain? Do you understand the terms that people are talking about, that you can take those and move those essential terms over to the area of the, in a different business? So
and really even, anymore, because whenever you apply for a job or you apply anywhere, hashtags. So, if you know what finance is all about, or you're applying for a job that might be a different department, but they work with the finance. There isn't anybody that a company doesn't need that has the bottom line business thoughts, skills, workability. So if you want to transition in careers, just really make sure that you're putting all those ingredients in, or learning, like you said, it might just be a mud puddle. It might not be a lake amount, but it's just on the surface to understand, to clarify, and to help yourself really move on that pivot. So we're going to go ahead and start going into the questions. We had a few from yesterday, and then we'll check out the chat for the rest of the questions. But Deb, the first question is, you already said Trendsetter, you already said Forbes. What other website, like if you could just kind of go business, IT, healthcare, what websites could people use to develop? Because even coming into our programs, whether it's our bachelor's or master's, having that underlying knowledge of things, like where would you direct them? Would those still be the three, the Forbes, the Trendsetter, and that? Are there any more?
I'd go to blogs. Blogbit AI is really a good one to kind of just, get some ideas of what's going on. I really like the worldeconomicforum.org, just for economic things that are going on in the world, kind of a global space. Actually, I really do like the Deloitte or any of the, the big three websites for things that are, that they're working on. There's a website called Idea Connection. That's good. Those are. Forbes is good.
I love that. I love that.
And
there's something for everybody in all of those that you mentioned. And then when we did the beginning questions and we said, are we a little fearful of a recession? I think it's always something that looms in your mind when you see profits go up or down in a company. But when we're assessing the current state as professionals, what should we kind of look at to see if we're going to start a company, like if we're going to join a company with a career or a college with education, who's successful, who's struggling, what are the indicators, the key indicators on that type of stuff with these industry ideas you just mentioned as well? And research, how do you really know?
Go to every industry and see what the key performance indicators are for those industries. You can find that. You could just Google, what are the KPIs, key performance indicators for an industry, and then research whether they're doing well in those areas. Every industry is going to be able to show you that generally, especially the, and then look at their what's called their 10Ks. If they have those available, it's their 10Ks, their financial reports.
I love 10Ks, but I thought it was just the geek in me. I love to look at everything and browse those.
And then healthcare, if they're a nonprofit, they have their reports out at the end of the year to look at as well. But every industry has something that's going very well. Like healthcare right now, they have what's called their hospital at home is a big thing that's going on, where hospitals are transitioning individuals that are still sick that would generally be in the hospitals generally they're transitioning into home and taking doctors and nurses are going home and caring for them in their homes. It's almost like the old house call, but they're taking care of them at home. And
Wow.
there's reports that show that they're doing very well there, and then they release them from their home. And so those kind of things are happening now in the hospital. Started in 2020, I think. So at the height of the pandemic, these are people that didn't have COVID. So it's some very interesting things that are going on, and that's in closed systems like Kaiser or the community health centers, community hospitals, rural hospitals. Those are things that are happening. Very interesting things that are happening in healthcare right now. So look at those kind of things. What's happening in the industry? So those are
I love that. And
supply chains.
I love how you covered all industries too, to really looking at, just looking at every which way you can go as a professional, because that's the other thing, is making sure we're not, sometimes when your roots are in one industry and you want to re-career, you're so deep that you can't be unplanted to go to another industry. But whatever you want to look at, like Deb just said, look at those different industries and those different ideas. So, like, bottom line, and the question, that you and I talked about yesterday, how can you be recession proof when everything is stacked against you in your environment? Because I know as humans, we like to look at those obstacles, we like to look at those problems, but I mean, finding that solution or getting over those obstacles, if you could kind of talk a little bit on that, and then we'll move to the questions in the chat.
Stay connected to people. I think during a recession is you're generally not going to find a job in the newspaper. Right. You're not going to be because you're going to be against, 20,000 other people that are applying for that same job. There's a book called What Color is Your Parachute? I don't know if you've ever, and I really abide by the What Color is Your Parachute. Get that book. If you've been laid off, get the book, What Color is Your Parachute? Because, and go through the list of things there, because it talks about how you connect with people. Other people are open. You're on their mind. They're thinking about you. You may have to, apply through but they'll help push you through. You'll get jobs through people knowing who you are and what you do. And there are ways to get a position that are you're not one of the many, you're one of the few. And that's how you get a job during a recession. You make yourself and set yourself up to be one of the few. And it's tough, but there's ways to do it. That book, What Color of Your Parachute, it saved me during the recession. I got a job 2 times during recession. It took me longer, but that's what you do. You set yourself up to be one of the few.
And I know we talked about what you do personally. Let's talk a minute about professionally too. You and I have both really faced things in our positions or in a career that they're like, you can't do that, or you're not supposed to do that. But then you just, you put on those blinders and you just make sure it happens. So when it comes to being indispensable, can you talk a little bit about the company in the 90s that we discussed? And then when you started our MBA program to set it up, just a few of the obstacles, but how professionally you changed the envelope.
Yeah, so this is my 9th MBA that I've started and worked in or started. I only started 3 MBAs, but this is working with the MBAs, I noticed that there was one thing, and that we didn't have a lot of people that were in the MBA didn't have context for understanding how to apply the content. So I said, I want to work in an MBA where we are providing the context, like the story, so they can apply stuff to the story of what's happening. When I learn accounting, I want to apply it to something. When I learn finance, I want to apply it to something. So we wrote a story of a startup, and it took us about 8 months to write this story. It's a very big story, and no other university would let us do that. It's like, no, it just takes too long. Global did, and I said, this is the way students will learn, is we'll look at it through the lens of accounting. We'll look at it, and so it was a big hurdle, like, to do it, but Global allowed us the time to do it, and every other university said, no, this is not the way, and Global said, and students are loving this MBA because of it, of how we can look at it through the marketing lens, we can look at it through the accounting lens. And I knew that this was the way, because I saw that's what was the hurdle of students learning. It's like, we didn't have anything to apply it to. And now it's that by the time they get done, they're consultants on every realm of looking at a company. And it's so fun. I just love it. And students are loving it too. So yes, you get through and you get past the hurdle. The other story is sometimes you have to walk away.
Right.
And especially when you're looking at your values, your own personal values. So I was one of three people that started a software company back in the 90s. And this software company was Dolphin Software on the West Coast here in Oregon. And it grew fast. We were one of the fastest growing software companies in the Pacific Northwest for 5 years. We were right there with Microsoft for 2 years. And then for some reason, they just really took off. But we were very proud of it. And then we sold it to the Daily Mail and General Trust out of the UK. Well, when you sell a company, they come in and they want to change the mission. You know, they want to change the values. They want to change a lot. Well, in about the 9th year of having the company, they wanted to take it to the next level. I know personally, I'm not the kind of person that's a second stage company. I'm a startup person. And as you can tell with MBA, I'm a startup. I want to do something like that. And they wanted to change the mission vision. They wanted to change the mission. They wanted to change the values. And I just found myself unaligned. So here I am walking away from my baby. I said, I can't do this. I can't do what you want me to do. We had like 89 employees, almost 90 employees. And I found myself needing to pivot and walk away. But I had prepared myself during that time. I didn't have my degree. I had 2 years of college at University of Oregon, and I walked away to start a company or to work, and then started the company. During that time that I was there, and it was during a recession, if you know about the 90s, it was a recession time, I finished my degree and I got my MBA. So I was in a position to be able to pivot when I walked away. I was preparing myself because I kind of knew what happens when you sell a company.
Right.
So I was prepared. And then I moved into education. So that was where I moved into education and started teaching and running an MBA here in Oregon. That was my first MBA. But it was like walking away from your baby because you know you have to do those things. But I was prepared and preparing myself. And so that's what I like to say is you prepare yourself for those things that you have to do and pivot. And sometimes it's an emotional thing. And oftentimes, if you prepare yourself, it's a decision of values. And
especially on that pivot to take the facts over the emotion.
Yeah.
And where do you want to be? Just like in hiring your employer or picking the education that you want to take. We're going to move over to a couple questions in the chat. So Stephen said, how should I advertise my master's of organizational leadership degree? Few have heard about it because they do expect an MBA, but he's also wasn't much in data technology project management. So he's specialized in innovation and change management and worked in the aerospace area. So he's recently obtained MIT Applied Business Analytics Cert, Six Sigma Green Belt. How would you advertise that? Because he keeps adding technical skills to go with his master's of organizational leadership. What would be your advice there?
Skills, focused on skills. Yeah. That's
what skills particularly would you say to go with that, or to?
It depends on the industry that he's applying to. So that's where you do those a little bit deeper dives and really find out what are the skills that, because unfortunately, you're going to have to get through the bots first in those industries.
So he used to be a director of quality in aerospace, and it scares hiring managers away. And I've had that too, where I was C-suite, and then I'm like, you know what, I just want to go have a director position. And they're like, well, like in biz analytics or supply chain, and they're just like, no, you know, you're overqualified. So how do you flip or pivot that overqualified conversation?
Just take those out. I would just actually take them out of your resume and just put in have a skills-based resume in there. And yeah, don't even put those in.
Yeah, I actually have 3 different resumes because I don't always put in my PhD. Scares people. A lot of times I'll just put my MBA or my undergrad. So right now, Dan says currently there are no suitable positions available at the hospital where he wants to work. Is it a good strategy to accept another unrelated position until a suitable position becomes available, or should he just keep looking somewhere else?
It's a really good question. I've had it, it depends on, I would say 2 things. One, does the hospital, if you really want to work there, are the mission, vision, and values, are they aligned with where you want to go? And do you believe that you'd be able to have lunch with people?
Yeah.
You know, would you be able to lunch with people there every day and meet people? I would say go. If it's like, that's the place I want to be, because people would do that at Nike all the time. They would take positions and they would go there, and Nike is a great place. And then I would ask, do they hire? Do they have the, track record of hiring from within?
Right.
It's a really important question to ask, because if you get in and get slotted, no. And they don't do that. If that's not what's they do, then don't do it. If they do have the track record of hiring from within, then I would. So I think that those are two very important questions to
I
ask.
think sometimes we put our lid on us. Like when I looked at the MBA and I was going to go master's of management, because I was a little nervous about the accounting and finance, and I hadn't done math in 20 years. So I think sometimes we put our own lid on. So anybody that's wondering, could I do a master's level degree, or could I grow in education? What would be your advice for them?
Accounting is just math.
Yeah.
That's what my advice would be. Accounting is just math. If you can do adding and subtracting, you can do accounting.
That's true. That's true.
There's no multiplication, there's no dividing, it's adding and subtracting.
And statistics is only a Walmart end cap. That's what somebody told me once, just why they put it on the end cap instead of the stove.
Yeah, so you can do it. Finance is fun. Once you get through accounting, for an MBA, what you're doing is you generally hire accountants, and you're just using the results of what they do to actually figure out problems in finance. So if you can get through accounting, you'll do just fine in finance. So that's how
I just sitting here laughing, because I'm like, we need another polling question that says, do you think finance is fun? Because there's some people who can balance their checkbook and others that are like, yeah. So here's another question from Gregory. He says, how about getting a part-time job at the same time as your full-time job? With remote work, this has become easier. What are your ideas kind of on that and growing your career with too? And I look at jobs as income streams. I'm a little different, that I look at my income streams and then fulfill the obligations for each income stream, whether a job or a hobby.
That's how I look at it as well, Dawn. And especially if you're taking a part-time job that's in an area that you really want to grow in, and find out if that's, if you're testing an area and say, that's really where I'm thinking about going, I say do it. Because that's what I did with education. When I tested it out, took a part-time job in that, and that's exactly how I tested out education. So, and it's becoming more and more, yes, people do it all the time now. So.
Yeah, and Robert had said, volunteering professional services to targeted NPOs. I want to help. He wanted to help, and it has provided connections, portfolio content, and some paid contract work to supplemental income, and work on pivoting to another sector while searching for his next opportunity. Do you have any advice there, Deb?
Oh, that's just what he put there. That's an excellent way to pivot. That's an excellent way. Yeah, Robert, that's spot on a way to do that. Yeah. And those are also, going for nonprofit leadership, that's a great way to people to have lunch with, and people to help you, to help you check up, to help do checkups with, because they always have super great books that they're reading.
Right. And I think if you look at a hiring mentality, you hire your employer, you hire these skills, you hire these areas of education or the degrees or the certificates. I think if you look at it from a professional lens, it just lends itself to where you need to fill in the blanks. Is there any last advice that you would give to really making yourself indispensable or recession-proof, Deb? And then we will close the call in this last 15 minutes.
No, I would just say that, look at the areas that you want to, build on. So like we said before, look at your areas, be truthful with yourself, and look at the areas that you want to build on. Treat yourself like you're what a business would do. Where are the areas that I can grow? Where are the areas that I have weaknesses? This is my time to really build on that, and to be prepared while I'm in this, fearful period, and what I can do to be ready. It's a time to just not, it's scary. I mean, we're not going to tell anybody it's not scary. It is scary. But what do you do when you get scared? You prepare yourself. You say, okay, what can I do to not be fearful? And that's, look at the areas that are causing you to be fearful. Why am I afraid? I'm afraid because I may not have the skill. I'm afraid because I might be weak in this area.
Right.
Buffer yourself. Get strong in that area. Prepare yourself. Get the skills that you need. Prepare yourself. Get the education that you need. Get the knowledge that you need. Practice where you need to. If it's I don't have the interviewing skills that I need. I need to be a better decision maker. I need to be a better critical reason. I need better critical thinking. I need to maybe be better in accounting. Just do it. Just, get that. If I'm taking org leadership areas, I want to, improve my leadership skills. I'm more of a follower than a leader. Just communication, just figure out where the weaknesses is and pour into yourself during this time.
And I think right now we almost have too much, because if you want to be a better student, a better employee, we've got YouTube, you can learn anything. My Army son just sits and watches some YouTube videos for skills, because to be a good student, you need skills. To be a good employee, you need skills. I'm going to circle back to the chat for just a minute, because David made a good point. He said reviewing companies' track record, like you mentioned, Deb, and hiring from within, but also looking, do they provide pay raises in a timely manner? Which that's a nice way to put that on there. And then Dan said, the biggest hurdle is that while I do want to change careers, most employees in IT are asking for experience, a specific number of years. So he hasn't solved that puzzle yet. What would be your advice kind of in that experience, which, I had a daughter, our middle daughter, she wanted to organize things at a baseball stadium instead of, she had her restaurant management. And so we figured out how she could transition that into setting up catering. What would be your advice if you haven't solved that puzzle yet, from taking your experience and your skills into an experience allotment for a job?
So I would say, if they're looking for years, show them projects. So if they're saying, I want to do, years of experience, show them projects and items that you've done. So take the years and put them into things that you've done or project that you've done, because what's going to happen is pretty soon businesses aren't going to be looking for years, because you're not going to have years. People are going to have project-based work where they've spent 6 months on this and 7 months on this and done things in 3, because that's getting crunched. You're not spending 5 years anymore. You're spending 3 months on something. So show them, like projects, this, and this that I've accomplished. They're not going to have the luxury of years anymore.
Exactly. And I think that's where, unless you are financially okay to do a apprenticeship or, a job that has those pieces that we had in college or, when we were younger. But yeah, it's a nice way to do it. So let's talk about the next webinar, Deb, and thank everybody for coming. So I will be quiet and let you finish this up and close.
So the next webinar, first of all, I'd like to invite all of you, when you're looking at sharpening your degrees, sharpening your toolkit. Colorado State Global has so many opportunities, and I of course want you to think about the MBA. So I'm going. That's my baby, and the Masters of Marketing, the Masters of Science and Marketing, both of those. So and I know that Don will close up on that as well, but. I'm so excited about the way we put this MBA together. So, reach out to me, reach out to anybody, but I would love to invite you to talk to me about that. But the next, our next webinar is going to be the end of March. We still don't have the date exactly down, but it's going to be with Matt Watson from Watson Creative. And he's the gentleman who's transitioned from Nike over to his own creative company, and he has I can tell you a couple of the people he has. His Denver Broncos is one of his customers. He'll tell you a couple more. He's got many of them that they do they call it engagement. So engagement software, and then also he's got his creative company, so it's marketing. But he's going to specifically talk about the way that they hire individuals now, hiring people, and the hiring approach that companies use these days. So he's going to be talking about that. but that's what we have. And then he's just a really fun and interesting person to talk to, just totally engaging. So love to invite you to be a part of that. So thank you very much for your time today.
I'm sure everybody love to tune into that. And just a little quote from President Pam Toney at CSU Global. Our overarching goal as a higher educational institution is to prepare students to be successful in the workplace and workforce. This involves ensuring that we have an industry relevant curriculum, quality instructors like Deb, and support services that prepare and support our students on their educational and professional journeys. Their success is ultimately our success. And with that, we thank you for being here today. Thank you for having this conversation. We will follow up. If you have any other questions, we'll also get those answered. So thank you for tuning in today and have an amazing rest of your Tuesday.